Okay.
Oh, those things.
Recording now.
We just started the recording.
All right.
That being said, hey, would you like to do any of the readings for tonight?
Send me the stuff. I'll take a look. I'll let you know. Let me
Sure.
make my.
The link's in the chat. So it's already sent, and we've already started the recording. So the links and the link for all the readings is in the chat. Um, since the recording's already started, I'm going to get started in the readings. Uh, uh, Amber is going to be reading Malachi, and David was possibly going to be reading Ezekiel. Amber's going to be reading some of the New Testament readings. Um, and so basically all that's really left is some of the New Testament readings if you'd like to do any of the readings. But we already started recording, so I'll get to it. So Shabbat Shalom, and welcome to the Fellowship of Christian Goths Shabbat Parasha services, where each week we read Parasha, which is the Hebrew word for portions of the Bible. A parasha is a ancient dividing or portioning out of readings from the Bible so that a person reads the entire Bible in 1 year. These portions were originally done and set up sometime before Christ. And so even during the life of Christ, they were doing these portions. Then later, Christians did these portions, and then as the New Testament writings were added, they added New Testament readings as well. And so, the early Christian church, the Catholic Church, historically did these portions. And at some point in the medieval period, they changed when they do which portions, but they still did a portions readings. And they still do portion readings to the modern day, although it's not in sync with the Jewish portions. Ours is in sync with the Jewish ones, but with the New Testament readings. So that's what parashah is. Sometimes people ask, and so I wanted to, every once in a while I like to say what it is. It's portions of the Bible, so we can read the whole Bible in 1 year. So this week we took a break, right? The last 2 weeks were holiday portions, and normally you only get one holiday portion during this time period, but because Pesach fell on Shabbat, it means we had two holiday portions. So we're back into our ordinary readings. We're on the Torah Parasha 29, so week 29. And this week's portion is called Acharei Mot, which translates into English as after the death. The Torah reading for today, for this week, is Leviticus chapter 16, verse 1 through chapter 18, verse 30. The Haftorah portion is Malachi chapter 3, verse 4 through, if you're reading the Masoretic, chapter 4, verse 6, or if you're reading it based on the Jewish numbering and the Septuagint numbering, it ends on chapter 3, verse 24. Then our next Haftorah portion is Ezekiel chapter 22, verses 1 through 19. Our Brit Hadashah portions, our Besora, our gospel portion is John chapter 7, verse 1 through verse 52. Then Romans, going into the epistles, into the letters, Paul's letter to the Romans, chapter 3, verses 19 through 28, and chapter 9, verse 30 through chapter 10, verse 13. Then Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 5, verses 1 through 13. And then Paul's second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 2, verse 1 through 11. And then Paul's letter to the Galatians, chapter 3, verse 10 through 14. Reading a lot of Paul this this week, aren't we? Reading from both Romans and Galatians. And that just counters what some people claim about me. Some people claim that I have no understanding of Romans or Galatians. I need to read it. It's like, guys, I read it all the time. So there's that one. So as always, we start with candlelight prayer, which will be said by Amber.
Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who sanctifies us with your commandments and commands us to be a light to the world. Let light shine in the darkness.
And our prayer before reading. Blessed are you, Yahuwah Elohim, King of the universe, who sanctifies us by your commandments, and who has given us your Torah, your wisdom, your teaching, your instruction, your word, and your living word, your path to salvation, Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ. Yahuwah, our God, we pray that you may give us open eyes and open ears and open hearts to receive your word and have your word written on our hearts, an open mind that we may understand your word, that your word may be on our mind, that we may see your will, what you want, and that we may be guided into your path. And we pray that our mouths may be open to proclaiming your word, and that our hands may be open to carrying out your word as shown to us through your Son, our good shepherd, Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ. Amen. So the Torah portion, Leviticus chapter 16, verse 1 through chapter 18, verse 30. Yahuwah spoke to Moshe after the deaths of the two sons of Aaron, when they drew near before Yahuwah and died. And, just in case it doesn't go into full details about it, though I think it will, but if you remember from a previous reading from several weeks back, what happened was Aaron had at least 3 sons, and his 2 eldest sons, well, they were, to be the high priest under him, and they were told to burn some incense for the Almighty. But instead of burning that exact recipe of incense that he told us 2 or 3 times in previous readings, they decided to burn an incense that was burned in the Egyptian temples. And so the Almighty declared, no, that's foreign fire. That is fire that, incense burned towards, false gods and idols. And Yahuwah Elohim has commanded, you shall not worship me in the same way that people worship false gods. Therefore, since you're burning foreign fire, I'm going to burn you guys. So then the Almighty sent down fire upon them and burned them to ashes right there. Well, not necessarily to ashes. They still had corpses, and the people still went and had to bury them. And then the Almighty had said to Aaron and his our son, don't mourn these guys, for their death was on their own hands. So I was like, oh. And then Aaron's 3rd son, became the next priest in line. So whenever it says after the death of the 2 sons of Aaron, that's what it's talking about. It mentioned that a few weeks ago. So when they drew near before Yahuwah and died, and Yahuwah said to Moshe, tell Aaron, your brother, not to come at any time into the holy place inside the veil, before the mercy seat that is on the ark, so that he may not die. For I will appear in the cloud over the mercy seat. But in this way Aaron shall come into the holy place with a bull from the herd for a sin offering, and a ram for a burnt offering. He shall put on the holy linen coat, and shall have the linen undergarment on his body. He shall tie the linen sash around his waist, and wear the linen turban. These are the holy garments. He shall bathe his body in water, and then put them on. And he shall take from the congregation of the people of Israel 2 male goats for a sin offering, and 1 ram for a burnt offering. So, this should all sound familiar because we've already heard this at least twice, So, but before we heard in much more detail, if you remember, it told us exactly how to make every single garment down to the smallest detail. So this time it spared us of that. Aaron shall offer the bull as a sin offering for himself, and shall make atonement for himself and for his house. Then he shall take the 2 goats and set them before Yahuwah at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And Aaron shall cast lots over the 2 goats, 1 lot for Yahuwah, and the other lot for Azazel. And Aaron shall present the goat on which the lot fell for Yahuwah, and use it as a sin offering. But the goat on which the lot fell for Azazel shall be presented alive before Yahuwah to make atonement over it, that it may be sent away into the wilderness of Azazel. So now that part that we just now read about this particular offering of the 1 bull and then the 2 goats. Now that is something that we've not read before. I mean, unless this is a later year for you and you've read through the whole thing previously, then you've obviously read it before, but it's not one we've read yet this year. So what this is talking about here is, I hope I'm right on this. I try to, teach correctly. So I hope I'm not misremembering, but if I recall, I believe that this is the sacrifice for Yom Kippur. So I'm 99% sure that, I pray that my memory is serving me correctly. So Yom Kippur is one of the fall feasts. It is the second fall feast. The first fall feast is Yom Teruah, Feast of Trumpets. So Yom Kippur is known as the Day of Atonement. And it is a day of fasting and afflicting the body physically so that one may grow spiritually. So on Yom Kippur, historically, they would sacrifice 2 goats, as it mentions here. That's what it's talking about. And what they would do is they would cast lots, and casting lots could either have been done through, pulling 2 sticks out, whichever one got the short stick, or casting lots could have been taking either rocks or else goat knuckle bones and throwing them in an urn and reading the number of grooves on the bones. They worked as dice. And so it says that, they'd cast lots. And then, depending on how the lots fell, 1 goat would have a plaque put on it that had the name of the Almighty, that had the name Yahuwah on it, or Yahweh, or however you wish to pronounce it, Jehovah, Yahweh, It has the name of the Almighty written on it, Yod He Vah He, and that goat would be sacrificed as a burnt offering, and then the other goat, their lot fell to Azazel. And there's some debate as to what the meaning of the word Azazel is. And it's quite a fascinating thing if one wants to look into it, but I will give you, a gist of it. I won't go into extreme detail, but I'll give you a nice amount of detail. So some speculate that Azazel is the name of a demon. If you look at demonology books, you'll see Azazel in there. Um, Others say that as back whenever, because you got to remember that the religion of the Israelites is very similar to the pagan religions of the Canaanites in that they share a lot of stuff. Yeah. And so some speculate that Azazel is a Canaanite desert spirit or Canaanite wilderness spirit. And specifically, they say that, because something that a lot of people don't understand about pagan religions is that the vast majority of pagan religions from all around the world, they would dedicate a different spirit or a different god or goddess in charge of different lakes, streams, oceans, areas of land. And so, each tree, if it was a big old tree that people really like, would have a different goddess or god that it was the god of that tree. And same thing with each different lake. So some people speculate that there was a particular area in the wilderness, in the
It's in the desert.
Israel
Yeah.
/ Canaanite, / Arabian desert, a particular area of the wilderness where Azazel was the pagan god of that area and or demon of that area. However, others just say that Azazel is the name of that area. And people have tried to find what area is Azazel. And the ancient Talmudic Jewish writings seem to say that the area known as Azazel was this kind of craggy desert rock canyon, jagged rocks area. So that is.
Did you mention the portion about Enoch?
No,
Okay.
I wasn't going to, but if you'd like to, go ahead.
Yeah. And Enoch, Azazel is attributed to basically be the leader of the fallen angels of Genesis 6, and so all.
The leader in Enoch is Satanel.
But it also actually mentions Azazel and it said that Azazel all human sin is attributed to Azazel, and so Azazel is then, what's that word I'm looking for? He's basically kicked out and kind of put into this desert area west of Egypt, and this is one theory that I've heard. It makes sense to me, but this is whenever they're doing the casting of lots and the offerings, whatever, it's supposed to be a reminder in quotations to Azazel of what he did.
Yeah, there's all sorts of things. If anyone would like us to do a special study specifically on Azazel, I'm always open to that. In one of the men's studies a few months ago, we actually read all of First Enoch. Well, we didn't finish it, but we read most of it. We read over half of Enoch. Josh, I personally think that you're mixing Azazel, a little bit of the information of Azazel with a little bit of the ones of Satanel.
Yeah, it's very possible. I just remember that portion.
But some of it you're confusing two different angels a little.
It's very possible. It's been a while since I read that.
Yeah, because you didn't stay for all that reading. But we have a lot to go through tonight, and I'm still recovering from an ear injury that might become permanent if I aggravate it more, and it gets aggravated when I talk. So we're not going to overly dwell on speculation of
You're
Azazel
good. Just
as
keep on going.
so. Not dwelling on that aspect of Azazel. If Bill would love to, we can do that another day. I would love to. It's funny. A lot of people might think that I don't like to go into that stuff. I do, but these studies are not the time to go into all those things. So at a different time, I'd love to go into that stuff. So, as mentioned, Azazel also could have been just the name of that particular area of the desert. And it's an area of the desert that's craggy, rocky, jagged rock ravine. So, and that mean actually comes important with what they later did with that goat. So, as I mentioned, there was a goat that its lot would fall to Azazel. Now, there's a few ways to translate Azazel. And one of the other ways, besides jagged rocky desert, or else some kind of a demon or Canaanite, deity. Besides those, another way that Azazel is translated, and you'll see this in some of your Bibles, because some Bibles translate it this way, is Azazel is also translated as scapegoat. And it's also translated as cast out, because this goat was the scapegoat, and the scapegoat was cast out. So there's all sorts of ways. Now, Dean and the cast out. Now, you noticed a moment ago, Joshua was mixing Azazel with Satan, right? With Satan. Now, as I mentioned, Azazel can be translated as cast out. Now, cast out, when we go from Hebrew, if it is Azazel, and then if we translate that into Greek, it's diavolo. And then if we translate that into Latin, it is diablo. So I could say, no, Joshua, Azazel's not Satan, he's Diablo. He's the devil, huh? He's the cast out one. Yes, Azazel means cast out as well, which in Latin is Diablo, the cast out one. So you're not entirely wrong, Joshua.
Yeah, very possible I could have gotten the two mixed up. And I know that we're not going to touch on this, but I do recommend people to do that research on the side. Continue.
Yeah, you're not entirely wrong though, because one translation of Azazel is the cast out one, but that could be applied to the goat. The goat is being cast out.
Yeah.
So there. Needless to say, there's a lot of debate on what Azazel meant. Is Azazel the goat? Is the goat the cast out one? Is it just mean the goat is being cast out, or is it something else? The thing is that part of the Bible, this part of the text, is so ancient that's why there's so much debate on what Azazel means, is because it's a very ancient part of the Bible. Historians have a hard time wrapping their head around what does it mean, because if there's only one God and if all the rest are fake gods, then who's this Azazel? What is this Azazel? What does Azazel mean? So that's that's one of those passages there that is rather confusing for historians. So, but moving on with the story. So the goat won lot for Yahuwah, and a plaque with the name Yahuwah is placed on that goat, and that goat is sent to the temple and sacrificed, at at the altar, and then the other goat, its lot falls on Azazel, and that goat, they tie a scarlet ribbon around its horns, And it's going to very likely say that in the next few passages. But they tie a scarlet ribbon, a scarlet thread, scarlet rope around its horns. And then they take that goat and they put the sins of the people on that goat. All the sins of the priest Aaron puts his hands on the goat, and all the sins of the people go onto that goat. And hence why it's called the scapegoat, which can also be the word Azazel. And confusing, right? Then they, according to this text, they take that goat and they release it out into the wilderness of Azazel. And it's not to come back. Now, in later times, in the time of Christ, they actually changed that ritual. And as they changed it, it's because of the goat occasionally wandering back and then kind of resend it out. What they ended up doing, and there's lots of historical written outside the Bible evidence for this story, them doing what I'm about to say, and that is they would take the goat, the one that the lot fell on Azazel, and they would tie that red rope around its horns, and then they would take that goat over to a cliff, probably a cliff leading down to the area called Azazel, and they would push the goat off of the cliff, and because the goat's horns were tied in with this, rope, the scarlet rope, whenever the goat fell, his neck would break and he would die. And this ran every year for Yom Kippur, and the moment that the goat died, the scarlet, ribbon or thread or rope would instantly change color and turn pure white. And that would be a sign to the people that their sins had been forgiven. All their sins were placed on the goat died, so the sins forgiven. Now, here's an interesting thing that is recorded by ancient historians and that is this. Supposedly, some ancient historians wrote this, and so supposedly, if we believe what they said, after the crucifixion of Yeshua HaMashiach, of Jesus Christ, every single Yom Kippur, because remember, he died around 33 AD, temple wasn't destroyed until 70 AD. So from 33 roundabout to 70, the temple still existed and they were still doing sacrifices after Christ. So every Yom Kippur, according to these ancient writers, after the death of Christ, whenever they would do that thing of throwing the goat off the cliff, the rope would not change color. The red rope would stay red and would not turn white anymore. From the time of the death of Christ on the cross until the time of the destruction of the temple, their sins were no longer being forgiven by that goat. So that interesting little ancient story there, right? Now, we've mentioned before that a red thread, a scarlet rope or thread, has huge significance within the Bible. It has significance of protection. Look at the story of Rahab for that. It has, symbols of selected ones that are set apart, that are holy, that are anointed. And it also has symbolisms and connections to scapegoats and the sins of a group of people being cast on an individual. So, yeah, the symbolism, within all that is really incredible. So, now that we have covered that as thoroughly as I'm going to go back and read verse 6 through, and just so that now that you know the context, it will come in much more clear, and then, I'm just going to keep reading on through. So, Aaron shall offer the bull as a sin offering for himself, and shall make atonement for himself and for his house. Then he shall take the 2 goats and set them before Yahuwah at the entrance of the tent of meeting, or of the tabernacle. And Aaron shall cast lots over the 2 goats, one lot for Yahuwah, and the other lot for Azazel. And Aaron shall present the goat on which the lot fell for Yahuwah, and use it as a sin offering. But the goat on which the lot fell for Azazel shall be presented alive before Yahuwah to make atonement over it, that it may be sent away into the wilderness to Azazel, or of Azazel. Aaron shall present the bull as a sin offering for himself, and shall make atonement for himself and for his house. He shall kill the bull as a sin offering for himself, and he shall take a censer full of coals of fire from the altar before Yahuwah, and 2 handfuls of sweet incense beaten small, and he shall bring it inside the veil, and put the incense on the fire before Yahuwah, that the cloud of the incense may cover the mercy seat that is over the testimony, or the witness, so that he does not die. And by testimony, they mean the ark and the tablets in this context. And he shall take some of the blood of the bull and sprinkle it with his finger on the front of the mercy seat. Again, that's the Ark of the Covenant, specifically the lid of the Ark of the Covenant, on the east side. And in front of the mercy seat, he shall sprinkle some of the blood with his finger 7 times. Or again, 7 times means completely, or fully. Then he shall kill the goat of the sin offering, that is for the people, and bring its blood inside the veil, and do with its blood as he did with the blood of the bull, sprinkling it over the mercy seat and in front of the mercy seat. Thus he shall make atonement for the holy place, because of the uncleanness of the people of Israel, and because of their transgressions, or their sins. And then it says all their sins. And so, because it's using the word transgression, then immediately after that the word sins, it's a good place for me to point out that this is another thing that tells us what sin is. Sin is transgression. Well, what are transgressions? Well, transgressions are whenever you have wronged someone. Well, who have you wronged in this case? God and your fellow man. How do we know how we've wronged God and or our fellow man? God tells us. That is his commandments, his instructions, his teaching, right? Well, how do we know what his commands, instructions, teachings are? We're reading it right now. So, when he says do something and you choose not to do it, that's a transgression. It's a sin. When he says don't do this and you choose to do it, that's a transgression. That's a sin. So, since we had the words transgression and sin, transgressions, all for their transgressions. Well, because of their transgressions, all their sins. Now you know what that means. So we continue. And so he shall do for the tent of meeting, which dwells with them in the midst of their uncleanliness. No one may be in the tent of meeting, or the tabernacle, from the time he enters to make atonement in the holy place, until he comes out and has made atonement for himself and for his house and for all the assembly of Israel. Then he shall go out to the altar that is before Yahuwah and make atonement for it, and shall take some of the blood of the bull and some of the blood of the goat, and put it on the horns of the altar all around. And he shall sprinkle some of the blood on it with his finger 7 times, and cleanse it and consecrate it from the uncleanness of the people of Israel. And when he has made an end of atoning for the holy place, and the tent of meeting, and the altar, he shall present the live goat, and Aaron shall lay both his hands on the head of the live goat, and confess over it all the iniquities, or all the sins, or all the lawlessness of the people of Israel, and all their transgressions, and all their sins, and he shall put them on the head of the goat, and send it away into the wilderness by the hand of a man who is in readiness. The goat shall bear all their iniquity, or all their lawlessness, or all their sin, on itself to a remote area, and he shall let the goat go free in the wilderness. Then Aaron shall come into the tent of meeting, and shall take off the linen garments that he put on when he went into the holy place, and shall leave them there. And he shall bathe his body in water in a holy place, and put on his garments, and come out, and offer his burnt offering and the burnt offering of the people, and make atonement for himself and for the people. And the fat of the sin offering he shall burn on the altar. And he who lets the goat go to Azazel shall wash his clothes and bathe his body in water. Afterward he may come into the camp. And the bull for the sin offering, and the goat for the sin offering, whose blood was brought in to make atonement in the holy place, shall be carried outside the camp. Their skin and their flesh and their dung shall be burned up with fire. And he who burns them shall wash his clothes and bathe his body in water. And afterward he may come into the camp. So, it's interesting. It's talking about how they can't come back into the camp till they've bathed. As you know from previous readings, that's the same rule for if you have leprosy, or else if you're menstruating, or if you have a nocturnal emission, or if you have some kind of disease, some obvious disease, because that's when I said leprosy earlier, as we know, that's actually what I meant, some kind of apparent disease. So that tells you that because of this transferal of sins of people, anyone who comes in contact with this stuff, they're needing to bathe, because there's there's something going on there with the sins of the people being transferred, and the transferal of that, and dealing with things that the sins of the people have been completely transferred into. And it shall be a statute to you forever, that in the 7th month, on the 10th day of the month, you shall afflict yourselves. That verse can also be translated as you shall fast, and shall do no work, either the native or the stranger who sojourns among you. And again, when it says stranger who sojourns among you, that means, so native means people genetically descended of Israel, of Jacob, of Jacob. However, the stranger or the foreigner who sojourns among you, that means people who are not natively actual genetic descendants of Israel, but who have chosen to follow the God of Israel, and chosen to follow Yahuwah, the God Father, Almighty Father. People who've chosen to follow him, those are the stranger or the foreigner who sojourns among you, who resides among you. So that's people who are of the nations, or Gentiles, who have been grafted in. That is what that line specifically means. You see it all throughout the Old Testament. So that is referring to Gentiles who choose to follow, the Abrahamic God. So, and if you notice, I was right. 10th day of the 7th month, you shall afflict yourself and fast. So, Yom Kippur. So, for on this day shall atonement be made for you to cleanse you. You shall be clean before Yahuwah from all your sin. It is a Sabbath of solemn rest to you. So it's a holy day of rest. The word Sabbath means rest. And you shall afflict yourselves, or fast. It is a statute forever. I like to mention this, but when it says forever, forever is forever. All that. Now, of course, some people like to say, well, Olam could mean an eon or an age. Yes, I don't deny it can have that meaning, but whenever it's traditionally been translated as forever, it means forever. When it's translated as age, it means age. So shall be a statute forever. It means it shall be forever. Interesting enough, olam, which is forever or eon or age, can also mean universe as well. So, well, I mentioned that as well. Because like the prayer that we do, Baruch atah Yahuwah Eloheinu melech haolam, right? Baruch, blessed, atah, you, Yahuwah, the name of the Almighty, melech, that's king. It can also mean my one, it can mean angel as well. But melech, king, ha, of, or the, and then olam, king of forever, king of the age, king of the universe. Blessed are you, Lord God, king of the universe. So we're dealing with, the word forever here. So I thought I would go into a little bit of a study there on the word olam. Funny enough, a few years ago, I was reading Revelations, and I was reading it in Latin. I was reading the Vulgate. And interesting enough, I found where in the English it was saying forever, but in the Latin it had the word olam. I was like, whoa, why is it written in a Hebrew word in this Latin? And that kind of goes to prove what some of my friends have theorized. And that is, as you guys may know, all of the oldest manuscripts that we have for the New Testament are in Greek. But some people speculate that they were all, or most of them, with the exception of a few of Paul's letters, were written originally in Hebrew. And I've noticed evidence in Revelations, or in its older title, Apocalypse. I've noticed evidence in Apocalypse, also called the Apocalypse of John. I've noticed that there does seem to be quite a number of Hebrew words in it, which indicates to me, along with some other evidence, that it probably was written in Hebrew to begin with. So I want to tell you about that weird find that I found of the Hebrew word for forever written in the Latin text. That was weird for me. Because you would expect like the Greek word eon to be there, but it wasn't. It was the word olam. So anyway, so Yom Kippur shall be a statute forever, and the priest who is anointed and consecrated as priest in his father's place shall make atonement, wearing the holy linen garment. He shall make atonement for the holy sanctuary, and he shall make atonement for the tent of meeting and for the altar, and he shall make atonement for the priests and for all the people of the assembly. And this shall be a statute forever for you. The atonement may be made for the people of Israel once in the year because of all their sins. And Aaron did as Yahuwah commanded Moshe. So there you go. That is, commandments regarding the Day of Atonement, which is said several times. For on this day shall atonement be made for you to cleanse you. So Day of Atonement, that would be Yom Kippur. That is the day that we're talking about. Leviticus chapter 17 now. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to Aaron and his sons, and to all the people of Israel, and say to them, this is the thing that Yahuwah has commanded. If any one of the house of Israel kills an ox or a lamb or a goat in the camp, or kills it outside the camp, and does not bring it to the entrance of the tent of meeting to offer it as a gift to Yahuwah in front of the tabernacle of Yahuwah, blood guilt shall be imputed to that man. He has shed blood, and that man shall be cut off from among his people. This is to the end that the people of Israel may bring their sacrifices that they sacrifice in the open field, that they may bring them to Yahuwah, to the priest at the entrance of the tent of meeting, and sacrifice them as a sacrifice of peace offerings to Yahuwah. And the priest shall throw the blood on the altar of Yahuwah at the entrance of the tent of meeting, and burn the fat for a pleasing aroma to Yahuwah. So they shall no more sacrifice their sacrifices to goat demons, after whom they whore. This shall be a statute forever for them throughout their generations. So, it's interesting. We were just talking about this goat being sent to a Zizol. And now it's talking about, so they shall no more sacrifice their sacrifice to goat demons. So, see, that might be a hint that Zizol is not a demon, right? I mean, that right there. They're supposed to sacrifice forever one of the goats to Azazel, but they shall not sacrifice to goat demons. So, see, people get real confused. What's the text talking about, right? So, it's what happens whenever you get really ancient text going on. It's hard to understand. So, if you notice, it also says that, when people sacrifice to other deities, that they are whoring. And the reason why it's referring to whoring, it's using that word. We've talked about this in our studies of Proverbs, in that we get into a marriage contract with the Almighty. Whenever we declare that we are His people and that He is our God, we have gone into a ketubah, into a covenant, to a contract. And whenever we go after other gods or go after other mighty ones, we are being unfaithful, because we're supposed to have just one mighty one, Yahuwah Elohim. So whenever we have mighty ones in our lives, which can even be ourselves, that we place over Him, when we place anything that's mightier in our life than God, we are being unfaithful to God. We are whoring. We're going after foreign women, as Proverbs calls it, or false wisdom, false teaching. And then whenever looking at this within the context of that Genesis account with the fallen angels, if one chooses to interpret it that way, there are other ways of interpreting that. If someone's curious into that, go back and listen to our very first week's recording. We talk all about it in that one. So not going to get into that discussion today. But one interpretation of that is that these fallen angels who fell because they were prideful and they did not want to exalt man over themselves. They wanted men to exalt them. But these angels who wanted men to exalt them, they came down from the heavens and they present themselves as gods and goddesses, and men started worshiping them as gods and goddesses. And so all, according to that interpretation, all of the pagan gods and goddesses are actually real. They're just not true gods and true goddesses. They're fallen angels, which of course could also be the word demon. Now, I also need to mention here that the word demon, historically, anciently, does not have the same meaning as what it does today. So when we say demon, we don't actually mean what people think. That's not actually what demon means. What demon means, demon is a Greek word. Now it's appearing here in this text here, but they're translating a Hebrew word into a Greek word for us. The Greek word demon just means a ethereal being, some kind of a being that is angel-like or spirit-like or godlike or genie-like, jinn-like. It's some kind of a spiritual being, So a demon in the Greek language was not necessarily a bad creature. You had bad demons, you had good demons, and you had neutral demons. In fact, the word could also be translated as elf or leprechaun or gnome. Well, gnome means a wise being, but maybe not the word gnome, but a fairy, a fae. The word demon can mean that as well. So a goblin, So, so the word demon was not necessarily a bad creature. That being said, though, the reason it has that context today is because of its connection in the Bible to fallen angels, which, as I just pointed out, if they were fallen because of their pride and they wanted men to exalt them as mighty ones instead of exalting Yahuwah as the only mighty one, well, then they are instantly bad at that point. So at that point, all demons are bad. All false gods are demons because all false gods are fallen angels. Uh, so, so there you go. That is how you get all that modern day context there. And again, that goes into a deep discussion on that aspect of Genesis, which if someone wants a further discussion on that, we can have that at a different time. But for now, that's as much as I'm going to be getting into demons, fallen angels, and false gods. But basically, just know that if one takes that interpretation of that passage from Genesis, that all pagan gods are actually real, but they are fallen angels. And whenever you worship them as a mighty one instead of the Almighty, you are cheating on your marriage contract with God. Because we are the bride, Christ is the bridegroom, he's the groom, and we are whoring when we do that. So that's why the Bible reversed idolatry as whoring, and it's throughout the Bible. So this shall be a statute forever for them throughout their generation. Is the next, the rest of that verse. So that we shall not whore after these goat demons, but we shall make our sacrifice to Almighty. Now, it mentioned here something interesting. It said, whenever you, either in the camp or outside the camp, kill an ox or a lamb or a goat, that, you shall give the best of it to the Almighty, and, the fats of it, and then a little to the priests, and then, you get some. It seems to be implying here, and I've said this before, that that's any meat that you slaughter, any of it. So, and that actually, there's a lot of historical evidence that is what it's talking about. One example is that in Jewish society, the butcher is always regarded second only in greatness to the rabbi, the head priest, if you will. And that is because in order to butcher an animal correctly, you have to be completely knowledgeable in the Torah, in the wisdom and teachings of God, second only to the actual person who teaches that stuff to everyone. And the butcher actually, historically, is probably of the bloodline of Aaron and his sons, because if you look at the text, who was the actual one butchering them? Well, you were possibly killing it and slitting its throat, but you were being guided in it, and or you're being guided in this butchering by the priest, or the priest was the one doing the butchering. And like the finer details of the butchering after you killed it. So that means that the butchers were the lower priests, because there were a lot of priests. There was the high priest, the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, and then there were the other priests, the other sons of Aaron. So it seems that your butchers and your priests were one and the same. So that's who your butcher was. It was one of the priests. And that also shows that I've mentioned before about how people ate very little meat back then, because it was very expensive to raise meat. Some people never ate meat. They just didn't get the chance. And you would take your meat, I mentioned this a few weeks ago, and you would, you know, give it to the Almighty as a sacrifice, and the best of it would go to God, then to the priest, then the majority of the meat would actually go to you, and that'd be the only meat that you'd be eating, really. And that's what this passage was saying. It's, whenever you go out and butcher an animal, whether it's in the camp or outside, you gotta give it, as a sacrifice to the Almighty, as a pleasing aroma, you know, to Yahuwah. So that's what it's talking about there. We'll continue with the text now. And you shall say to them, and any one of the house of Israel, or of the strangers who sojourn among you, who offers a burnt offering or sacrifice, and does not bring it to the entrance of the tent of meat to offer it to Yahuwah, that man shall be cut off from his people. So you definitely didn't want to do any sacrifices that were unauthorized. That's definitely what's being said there. If any one of the house of Israel or of the strangers who sojourn among them eats any blood, I will set my face against that person. Saying God set his face against the person is another way of saying he will curse you. I will set my face against that person who eats blood and will cut him off from among his people. For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it for you on the altar to make atonement for your souls or for your lives, because Hebrew word for souls, Hebrew word for lives is the same word. For it is the blood that makes atonement by the life. Therefore, I have said to the people of Israel, no person among you shall eat blood, neither shall any stranger who sojourns among you eat blood. You also see this in the New Testament. Whenever the people say, do we have to be following all of the rules of the Old Testament, all the commandments, just to become followers of Christ? Or, because that's a lot to put all on us all at once. Or can we just start with some small number and learn as we go, as the weeks go on, and learn slowly? And the apostles, the apostles met together. It was Paul and James and Peter and the others, but Paul, James, and Peter are the ones that are listed, and they discussed that debate. This is in the book of Acts, and they came to the conclusion that no, it would be overly daunting to tell someone, nope, in order to start following Christ, you must first follow all this stuff. Whoa, yeah, dude, start them off like babies, as Paul says, and work their way up. So to more solid food. So instead, they gave a particular smaller set of commandments that the people had to initially follow, and then they could learn the rest as they went. And these initial commands, I don't have them all memorized, and I don't have the text in front of me, but it was basically don't worship false gods, and a few others. And then one of the commandments was do not drink blood, or do not consume blood, which is what you have here. So this commandment is one of the ones that is directly stated in the New Testament in the book of Acts. That a person, the moment they start following Christ, they must follow this commandment. By the way, this commandment is also why vampires are considered to be damned, instantly damned, with no hope of salvation, historically. It's because vampires, of course, have to drink blood. Also, vampires are drinking human blood normally, which is cannibalism, which is a different commandment. So, but yeah, there you go. That is the commandment that it is not kosher to. Kosher means clean and acceptable. It's not clean and acceptable to eat blood. We're not just talking about human blood, we're talking about animal blood here. Funny enough, a lot of people wonder, what is kosher salt? Kosher salt, all salt is kosher. All salt is kosher. Kosher salt is thick, big salt crystals that whenever you are slaughtering an animal in a kosher way, you cut open the animal, take out its intestines, and you put in salt into the inside of the body and let the salt sit there and soak up the blood. Those big salt crystals, they soak up all the blood of the animal, and then you wash all the salt off with water. Therefore, there's no more blood left in the animal. That is how kosher salt actually gets its name. It's koshering salt, salt that's used to kosher animals. By kosher, they mean remove the blood. So. Another thing that's worth mentioning in this passage is that this passage is actually quoted in Dracula and in a lot of vampire movies. For it says, for the life of the flesh is in the blood. So the blood is the life, is the modern day way that everyone knows that line. The blood is the life. That's a famous vampire line. So there it is. Black pudding, also known as blood pudding, also known as blood sausage, not kosher. Sorry, especially to the British person who might be listening to this, because I know that you guys love your black pudding, also called blood sausage, but not kosher. So there you go. And again, if someone says, "Oh, but that's all Old Testament," well, first of all, I've already said, Bob makes clear, Old Testament laws still apply. But that being said, even if someone thinks they don't, dude, this is mentioned in the book of Acts as one that the followers still have to follow. So still applies. Can't get around that one. Eating blood, not actually allowed. Again, we have free will. If you want to eat blood sausage, I can't stop you. You have free will. You're going to do what you want. This is God's suggestion. He doesn't want blood-borne pathogens and diseases to get into you. That's what God is saying there. He recommends don't do it. If you want to do it, it's on you. If you want to get sick, want to get a parasite, it's on you. So by all means, don't think that I'm telling you you can't. If you want to eat it, that's your decision. So moving forward, anyone also of the people of Israel or of the strangers who sojourn among them, who takes in hunting any beast or bird that may be eaten, shall pour out its blood and cover it with earth. For the life of every creature is its blood. That can also be translated as the life of all flesh is its blood. Its blood is its life. So again, that vampire passage there. By the way, its blood is its life can also be translated as its blood, it is in its life. Therefore, I've said to the people of Israel, you shall not eat the blood of any creature, for the life of every creature is its blood. Whoever eats it shall be cut off, and every person who eats what dies of itself, or what is torn by beasts, whether he is a native or a sojourner, shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the evening. Then he shall be clean. But if he does not wash them or bathe his flesh, he shall bear his iniquity or his lawlessness or his sin. So, we've mentioned that aspect before because it mentioned that a few chapters ago when it was talking about, what foods are clean and what foods are unclean, or kosher or unkosher, however you want to word them, in that it mentioned, don't eat even if it's a kosher creature, mean a cow, a sheep, or a goat, Don't eat it if it died on its own. You don't know what it died of. You don't know what illness or disease killed it. You don't want to get sick from that. Nor do you want to eat it if it was killed by beasts like wolves or anything. You don't know if they have rabies. You don't know, what gangrene or whatever's gone into the creature since it died. No, only eat it when you slaughter it yourself. Or have a priest slaughter, or just you have to be the one who, a human had to have killed it. It must not have died on its own or been killed by other animals. It's very unhealthy, very unclean. That's why it says if you do end up eating that stuff, wash your clothing, bathe, get that stuff off. Unclean. Even if it's a clean animal, if you don't know what killed it, assume it probably had an illness. That's what it's saying there. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, "Speak to the people of Israel and say to them, I am Yahuwah, your Elohim. I am Yahuwah, your mighty one. You shall not do as they do in the land of Egypt, where you shall not do as they do in the land of Egypt, where you live, and you shall not do as they do in the land of Canaan, to which I am bringing you. You shall not walk in their statutes. You shall follow my rules, or my just decrees, or my righteous decrees, and keep my statutes and walk in them. I am Yahuwah, your Elohim, your mighty one. You shall therefore keep my statutes and my rules, or just decrees. If a person does them, he shall live by them. I am Yahuwah." So see, that's what I was saying earlier about how you shall not, live in the teachings of the Egyptians or of the Canaanites. You shall not worship me the way they worship their gods. You shall not live as they are instructed to live. You shall live as I, Yahuwah, your Elohim, instructs you to live. So, that's God making it clear that no, he doesn't want us to say, "Oh, I believe in you, I follow you," and then just continue on the way we've always been living. No, we've got to change the way that we've been living. We have to not live as we had lived under those false teachings, but live the way that he tells us we should live. Again, we have free will. We can just ignore him, go on in our merry way. But if we want to follow him, we've got to actually follow him. Yeah, that's what he's saying there. And he's also saying, no, don't worship me the way you worship your pagan gods. Which, some people would point out that means that if the way that most Americans do Easter is the way that people worship Ostara or Ishtar with the whole bunnies and eggs thing, then maybe we shouldn't be worshiping God by doing the bunnies and eggs. Probably not, right? Probably not a proper way to worship him. Born fire, right? At that point. So same way with Christmas and whatnot. In that you should really, and of course the time of Christmas, which we already had that around that time of the year, but that's also, well, wait a minute, are these the holidays that he commanded? What are the holidays he commands in his instruction? Oh, yeah, probably not worship him on holidays that were for other gods. Worship him on the holidays that he told us to worship him on. Yeah, probably. Should probably worship him on the days he said. Again, you have free will. You're gonna do whatever you want. Just little note there. What does God want? Right? Oh, good point. So, it is what it is. Not gonna dwell on that. Talked about that a few months ago. So, but it mentioned it, so I mentioned it. It continues, none of you shall approach any one of his close relatives to uncover nakedness. I am Yahuwah. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father, which is the nakedness of your mother. She is your mother. You shall not uncover her nakedness. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father's wife. It is your father's nakedness. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your sister, your father's daughter, or your mother's daughter, whether brought up in the family or in another home. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your son's daughter or of your daughter's daughter, or your granddaughter, or your grandchildren, for their nakedness is your own nakedness. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father's wife's daughter, brought up in your father's family, since she is your sister, or stepsister. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father's sister, your aunt. She is your father's relative. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your mother's sister, for she is your mother's relative, your maternal aunt. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father's brother. That is, you shall not approach his wife. She is your aunt. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your daughter-in-law. She is your son's wife. You shall not uncover her nakedness. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your brother's wife. It is your brother's nakedness. You shall not uncover the nakedness of a woman and of her daughter. And you shall not take her son's daughter or her daughter's daughter to uncover her nakedness. They are relatives. It is depravity. And you shall not take a woman as a rival wife to her sister, uncovering her nakedness while her sister is still alive. Before we go on to the rest of the text, so uncovered nakedness, there's at least two meanings that could have, right? One could just mean like peeping, being a peeping Tom. The other one could obviously mean sex. Don't have sex with your aunt or with your daughter or with your granddaughter or with your son's wife or with your son's daughter. Don't do this, right? So these are collectively known as the incest commandments. Don't commit incest, is what's saying here. It's depravity, it's despicable, it's sinful, and it's genetically harmful for any children that may come from that, right? We know this. Science tells us that, now. So don't do incest. It is unhealthy. It is bad. Don't do it. So, Yahuwah Elohim, God Almighty, he went into such great detail here. Someone asks, well, what if it's my cousin? What if it's my second cousin? Is that okay? By the way, it does sound like a cousin would be okay. It said don't have sex with your aunt. It did not say don't have sex with your aunt's child. Or well, wait. How about uncles? I know it said uncle. Let me see what it says about. Trying to find where brother, sister. Does it say anything about your uncle's daughter? Because then that'd be your first cousin. Let's see here. You shall not cover trying to find where it said uncle. I know it said father's brother somewhere. That so you shall not uncover the nakedness of your father's brother. That is, you shall not approach his wife. She's your aunt. So no, again about the aunt. So no. So apparently cousins was okay. But apparently according to the Bible that was distant enough. According to United States laws, it's second cousins. You can marry your second cousin in the United States. Bible, it seems first cousin is okay. But anything closer than that, too close, not acceptable, unhealthy. Don't do it, is what God said. So that is his commandment. So, and even if it's a stepsister, apparently, which there's no genetic relationship to, even with that, God's like, nah, that's just dirty. And then you'll notice it also says, don't have sex with a woman and her daughter. some people have that fetish. I've actually met people, oh, I'm going to have sex with a woman and her daughter. No, God says no. Don't do it. Don't do it. So, and again, that's not about genetic stuff because they're not related to you. That's moral at that point. That is, don't do that. That's immoral, So now, with that final little verse there, we do get into where you get a line that makes you question some of the decisions of the patriarchs. Because you got in verse 18, and you shall not take a woman as a rival wife to her sister, uncovering her nakedness while her sister is still alive. But how about Jacob, also known as Israel, and and Rachel and Leah? Weren't those sister? Yeah, and there was all sorts of horrible rivalry going on between those two women, right? So then someone could say, so didn't Jacob, didn't he, commit a sin there? Well, first thing to know, hey, no one's perfect outside of Christ, right? But Jacob, we know he sinned occasionally. That being said, did Jacob actually cause that sin? And I would say no. He was tricked into it by I believe it was Laban, right? Laban, I believe that's the father of Rachel and Leah. If you remember, Jacob wanted to work for the 7 years in order to marry Rachel. Laban tricked him into marrying Leah, and the next day he said, "What the hey, man? You gave me the wrong girl. I worked all this time for Rachel. Why you give me Leah?" And Laban said, "Oh, it's not right to marry the younger before we marry off the older. And so I had to give you Leah." He's like, "But I didn't want Leah. The deal was Rachel." And he said, "Hey, work for me another 7 years. I'll give you Rachel." They worked another 7 years and got Rachel. So actually, hey, Jacob did not purposely do that sin. He was just wanting the one wife, Rachel. It was Laban's fault. Laban tricked him into that. So it's worth noting there, Jacob did not intentionally do that. Although that gets into the hilarious question, wait a minute here. So it said that, put a veil over her head and got real drunk during the wine ceremony, and he didn't recognize that was the wrong sister until the next day. In love with this girl for 7 years and doesn't recognize that he's having sex with the wrong girl on the wedding night. I know. Hey, they said her face was covered and he was very drunk. But yeah, so no, that would be Laban's sin. Laban did that. And look at the rivalry that caused. So thus, God's advice, don't do that. Don't marry two sisters. It doesn't end well. It leads to rivalry. Wisdom of God. All right. We continue. You shall not approach a woman to uncover her nakedness while she is in her menstrual uncleanliness. Of course, this is a repeat of what we had, I think it was last Torah portion study. Normally it'd be last week, but we've had a few weeks, off here because of Pesach. But we had in our previous reading, it said, don't have sex with a woman while she's menstruating, otherwise you're going to be unclean for 7 days. Then now here we're having the same thing. Again, that's the Bible repeating itself so that things are proven by 2 or 3 witnesses. So, you shall not approach a woman to uncover her nakedness or have sex with her or spy on her while she is in her menstrual uncleanliness. And you shall not lie sexually with your neighbor's wife and so make yourself unclean with her. So, don't commit adultery. You shall not give any of your children to offer them to Malak. And another way of translating that, the more direct way, is you shall not give any of your children to make them pass through the fire to Malach. I'll get more into that in a moment. And so profane the name of your Elohim. I am Yahuwah. So, Malach was a Canaanite god, and he was the Canaanite god of lordship. People would make sacrifices to Malach in order to ask for that Malach would make them more powerful, or to make them Elohim, to make them more mighty, to make them mighty ones over others, or else to make them a more mighty one for their own life, so they would make sacrifices to Moloch so that they may become more in control of their own life. So it says, don't offer your children and by passing them through the fire of Moloch. So there's a few ways to interpret what's happening there. Some of them more dark and grisly, some of them not so much. So I'm going to start with the least dark and dark one, and then go to some real dark areas. So some say that what the Canaanites did there was that they didn't actually kill their children, but what they would do is that they would basically create a wall, two walls of fire, basically. So basically create two bonfires and have a passageway in between them. And that as a rite of passage, be it like whenever their child is either an infant, or maybe whenever they are entering into their preteens, puberty, or when they're a baby, one of those two. Either the parent having the child walk between the two fires, or else if they're very young, the parent walking through the fires with the child. And that was some sort of a rite of passage, something kind of like a baptism or a confirmation or something in their worship of Melech. So that is the least grim interpretation. So it's the Almighty saying, look, the Canaanites do this. Don't have your children do this. And don't have them do this even in the name of Yahuwah, because you're profaning his name. You're taking his name and making it, by the way, the word profane means ordinary. You're making it ordinary. You're making it just like the other false gods. So that is the least bloody definition of that, or explanation of that passage, of that verse. Some other darker ones is some historians say that the Canaanites and the Phoenicians and stuff like that would actually take their firstborn child, and so if you remember, God says that all of the firstborn of the clean animals shall be sacrificed to him, Yahuwah, and that the unclean ones shall be redeemed for a price in silver, and or redeemed by a non-firstborn kosher animal being sacrificed. And then God says that the firstborn child, or even all male children, or at least all firstborn male, but maybe all males, were also to be dedicated to Yahuwah Elohim, but instead of being sacrificed, they were to be redeemed by half shekel of silver, which today would be $15, which isn't that bad. So that is in contrast to what the Canaanites possibly did with Melech, and that is their firstborn child, maybe just their firstborn son, but maybe just their firstborn child in general. They would take that newborn baby and offer it as a burnt offering, killing it, to Melech. Now again, some people would just say they would dedicate it to Melech, by passing it between two fires and the child would be alive. But other interpretations is that they actually killed their babies, that the Philistines which is the Phoenicians, or else the Canaanites would actually kill their babies, burn up their firstborn child as dedication to the false god Moloch. Now, back many, many months ago, back when we were still in Genesis, one of our members of our fellowship who isn't here tonight, Rizzo, brought up the question of abortion. And I addressed abortion that night, but I also mentioned that there are later passages in the Bible where abortion can be brought up, and this is one of them. So Melech was the god of lordship. So one of the hot button questions that is sometimes asked is abortion a sin? Now, some people who claim to be Christians will say, no, it's not. Other people who claim to be Christians will say, yes, it is. I understand that that is a very hot topic, and that depending on how one wants to define abortion, I went into this a lot during that previous discussion. How one wants to define it, abortion can have radically different meanings. I will give one of the meanings right now because it's one that a lot of pro-life conservative people don't realize, that pro-choice people are actually using it in this other meaning, which totally is a different way of meaning the word. So, medically, the word abortion is also medically on medical paper, medical documents, is the word used for a miscarriage, even if it was unintentional, even if the woman wanted the child and the child died. Okay? Now, sometimes when a pregnant woman who wants the child, when the child dies, sometimes it's too big to easily come out, and sometimes the woman doesn't go into contractions, at which point the dead, rotting corpse of the baby starts rotting inside the woman, which poisons her blood, causes sepsis, and will kill her. Now, one reason that a lot of pro-choicers fight for a woman's right to have an abortion is because they believe that if abortion is outlawed, that if a woman has a miscarriage and the baby doesn't come out of her, that then medical doctors feel will just have to let her die of sepsis. Now, 99.9% of pro-lifers would say, oh, no, that's not what we mean. She's allowed to get the baby taken out at that point. The baby's dead. But here's the issue. We know from other countries that have outlawed abortion that oftentimes they will refuse to take out even the dead baby and will cause the mothers to die of sepsis. So that is why people who are pro-choice are in favor of allowing abortions so that women don't die of sepsis. I personally think what needs to be redefined there is the use of the word abortion versus the use of the word miscarriage there, right? If the baby's already dead, take it out. In fact, the Bible does have a passage about that too. There is a passage that says if the baby is dead, it's okay to for a doctor to reach in to the mother and cut apart the dead baby and take it out piece by piece. Which, there we go. There's the word abortion happening in the Bible right there. Whew. But the baby's already dead. So there you go. So abortion is being touched upon right there. The Bible does touch upon abortion. If the baby's dead, an abortion is okay. The baby's still alive, well, then the Bible says, if a man kills the baby, then, the man is to be stoned to death. Although, as I said, because we already touched that, some say, no, it's only if he kills the mother, if he kills the baby, he just has to pay money. That passage is debated. We already talked about that a few weeks ago, right? So, getting back to Moloch and how Moloch ties into abortion, and that is this. Moloch is the god of lordship, the god of being a my one. I want control over my own life, is what a person who might sacrifice to Moloch might say. So, if someone sacrifices and or kills their children because they want more control over their own life, and they're concerned that if they have this baby, they will lose some of that control over their own life, they are worshiping Moloch. That is one way of interpreting this passage. So, by that notion, if a person's reason for having the abortion is because they don't want to give up that control of their life to having to take care of a baby, they're worshiping Moloch. They're committing idolatry. Therefore, they are sinning. So there you go. So if you notice, that doesn't cover the other reasons that people have abortion. Um, you know, abortion and people's reasons for it, as I mentioned several months ago, very complicated. There's lots of reasons that someone could have an abortion. I'm not trying to excuse any of those reasons. I understand the world's a complicated place. People have free will. People don't have to follow God. God gives his recommendation of how he wants you to behave. You don't have to follow him. You have free will. If a person wants to kill their own children, they have free will. They can kill their own children. Does that mean it's right to kill your own children? No. Does that mean that that's what God wants? No. So does that mean that's maybe a sin? Yeah. But people have free will to sin. They have free will to choose to sin. So, the Bible makes that clear. So it's not necessarily right. But if someone wants to kill their own child, they do have free will, and it's a little hard to stop them, right? If someone really, really wants to kill their own children, oh, how are you going to stop them? All right? Tell me that. How are you going to do it? It's like if someone wants to kill themselves, right? Killing yourself, it's a sin, some say, right? Bible seems to make that clear. But if someone really wants to kill themselves, what you going to do? How are you going to stop them? Tell me that. Go ahead. Right? So, it is what it is. People are going to do what they're going to do. But all I can do is read the scripture to you and tell you the various ways that's been interpreted over the century, right? So one interpretation is that if you are killing your child in order to gain more control over your own life or to not give up control, you are worshiping Moloch. You're engaging in idolatry. You are whoring after false gods. So there you go. So we shall now move on from the discussion of Moloch. Next one, verse 22. You shall not lie with a male as with a woman. It is an abomination. Oh, great. I just walk into another big discussion. Oh, so whew, big discussions tonight. So there is another way that verse can be interpreted. The other way that verse can be interpreted is you shall not lie with a little boy as with a woman is an abomination. That's another way of translating that verse. People say, well, what's the difference there? Well, there can be a difference, and that is, so one is it could be talking about all men. It could be you shall not lie with a male as with a woman. It's an abomination. That's one way to take it. That would, of course, ban all homosexuality, right? The other, or at least amongst men, right? Probably goes both ways, so amongst women as well. So the other way that some interpret as the word little boy is that it's banning pediatry. So pediatry is a form of pedophilia where a elderly man, a man who's probably around in his 40s, who is usually a pagan general of an army, would oftentimes take on a young boy around the age of 12 to be his homosexual lover. And that boy would end up being his protege, who then would be trained to be the next general of that pagan army. So it can be possibly be interpreted as don't be sexually abusive in a power hierarchy where someone, like a general, someone with, or a captain, is engaging in sexual relations with a young man who wants to, gain in their position in the military. So this verse could be banning that. It could be banning pedophilia. Don't be a pedophile, right? It could be banning, a boss or a manager having sex with a employee who is of a lower rank. Or it can be interpreted as a man shall not have sex with a man the way that he has sex with a woman. Those are all possible ways that passage is interpreted by different groups of people. I have looked at the Hebrew word there. The Hebrew word there seems to be the word man and the word man. So, male human, male human. So it seems to, in the Hebrew, be saying don't engage in homosexuality. But, I like to point out other people have interpreted those other ways. So there you go. Now, an interesting thing to note here is it says, do not do it is an abomination. What else does Leviticus say just about 3 or 4 chapters earlier is an abomination? Oh, yes, it says, do not eat shellfish. It's an abomination. Do not, right? Clearly, that's what it said. So, as I pointed out when we read the kosher food laws, for people who say, oh, no, those laws have been done away with. We can eat what we want. And then you ask them, oh, how do you feel about a man having sex with another man? That's a sin. It's an abomination. The Bible says it's an abomination. But the Bible said eating shrimp is an abomination too. The Bible said eating crab is an abomination too. It used the exact same Hebrew word. So, yeah. So at that point, now again, as I said that day, and as I said earlier today, you have free will. You can eat whatever you want. God is giving his suggestions of what is healthy to eat, what's clean to eat. But you can eat what you want. Same way with this homosexual thing, right? I mean, if a man wants to have sex with another man, he has free will. He's going to do it. How you going to stop him? Right? So, that being said, you can get all sorts of sexually transmitted diseases from having homosexual sex. We know this, right? So, God recommends probably not healthy or a good idea. Also, you can have, I apologize, it's going to get very disgusting, but you can get anal tears because things aren't supposed to go up that, things aren't supposed to go in that hole, right? So a man sticking this thing in that hole, you can get injuries. It's probably not healthy to, to engage in homosexual sex. But that's just God's recommendation, right? We have free will, right? Person's gonna do what they're gonna do. All right. So if you want to eat shrimp or be a man, have sex with a man, that's between you and God. Okay. Now, if you ask me, well, what does God recommend is healthy? Well, I'm going to tell you what God recommends. But if you don't want to hear it, okay, live your life. That's between you and God. But what I don't like and what Christ didn't like was hypocrisy. People taking rules of God and ignoring the ones that they want to do, and not ignoring ones they don't want to do. And so this whole hypocrisy of people eating shrimp and being okay with that, but at the same time yelling at homosexuals, that's not okay. Because they're both equally abomination according to God. You can't dance around it. We've read the text. Eating shrimp is an abomination. Having sex with another man is an abomination. Let's not claim that one's okay and the other one's not, okay? They're both not okay. According to God, you have free will. You can do what you want. I don't care. It's between you and God. But let's not yell at a man having sex with another man and say that they're doing an abomination while you're over here eating shrimp. That's hypocrisy, okay? That's being a hypocrite. Let's be truthful. Let's be honest. They're both an abomination. See, I'm not going to win any fans by saying this stuff. I'm not saying this for get people to like me, because obviously gay people, they're not going to like me calling them an abomination. People who eat shrimp are not going to like me calling them an abomination. I'm not gaining any friends by telling you what God is saying. I'm just telling you what he's saying. Okay? And I'm not judging. Because you want to eat shrimp? It's between you and God. You want to have sex with another man? It's between you and God. So, so there you go. There is that discussion right there. A man having sex with another man is only as much of a sin as eating shrimp. Let's be honest here. Okay. All right. Moving on. You shall not lie with any animal, and so make yourself unclean with it. Neither shall any woman give herself to an animal to lie with it. It is a perversion. No bestiality. Don't have sex with animals. God says unclean. You're going to get a disease. You're going to get an illness. Right? Interesting enough, scientists have done genetic research on syphilis, the sexually transmitted disease syphilis. They found out that syphilis was transferred to humans through chimpanzees, which means that the way that the sexually transmitted disease of syphilis came into humans was some human had sex with a monkey or a chimp. Okay, probably not a good idea. Don't have sex with animals. It's what the Bible is saying here. It's a perversion. And this also, God is saying this because it's something that pagans did. There's the story of the wife of Minos, Pasiphae, who she fell in love with. I think it was Zeus, who disguised himself as a bull, and she had her servants make herself a copper bull statue that she climbed into with a hole in the private parts of the bull, and she put her private parts up to that hole, and the bull had sex with her, and she gave birth to the Minotaur, the body of a man, head of a bull. So it was a practice amongst some pagans for some pagan priestesses to have sex with bulls. And it's an abomination, a perversion. So God is saying that here. He's saying, don't do bestiality. So tonight, look at tonight. We've covered bestiality, we've covered incest, we've covered homosexuality, we've covered abortion. A pretty big night, isn't it? The biggest night we've had since our very first reading of Genesis. That one also covered a lot of hot topic issues. So there you go. Do not make yourself unclean by any of these things. For by all these the nations, or the Gentiles, I am driving out before you, have become unclean. So I mean the Canaanites, they did these things. And the land became unclean, so that I punished its iniquity, or its sin, or its lawlessness. And the land vomited out its inhabitants. But you shall keep my statutes, my rules, or my just decrees, my righteous, commandments, and do none of these abominations, either the native or the stranger who sojourns among you. Now, I want to say, remember, there were no chapters and verses in the original Bible, right? So when it says, don't do any of these things that I tell you not to do, instead do things I tell you to do, it is referring to all of the past several weeks, past few months. I'll blow my nose up here. So it's not just referring to the things that we just read today. It's referring to the things that we've been reading for months now. All of those commandments that we've been reading, this is, and, God's already said this a few times with them now. He says it every few of them, that we are to follow them, we're to keep them, that whenever we don't keep them, we're committing sin, and if you notice, it says either the native or the stranger who sojourns among you. So, I mean, anyone who chooses to follow God should be following these. Again, we have free will. We don't have to, but it is in our best interest for us to do so. It is healthy for us, physically, mentally, spiritually, to follow what He has said in all these commandments that we've been reading throughout the past, few months now. So that's what He's saying here, So, it says, that we're not to do these abominations. And it says, and do none of these abominations. So I say, he's just talking about the incest and the bestiality. No, he's talking about the past several weeks too. So he's also talking about the abomination of eating shrimp. He said, don't do it. Again, you have free will. You want to eat shrimp, that's on you. But just clear here, he's saying anyone who follows me shouldn't be doing these abominations that we've talked about for the past few weeks. So we'll continue. For the people of the land who were before you did all these abominations, so that the land became unclean, lest the land vomit you out when you make it unclean, as it vomited out the nations that was before you. For everyone who does any of these abominations, the persons who do them shall be cut off from among their people. So keep my charge never to practice any of the abominations. Okay, I guess she had to go. One of our people just walked out. So I'll continue. For everyone who does any of these abominations, the persons who do them shall be cut off from among their people. So keep my charge never to practice any of these abominable customs that were practiced before you, and never to make yourselves unclean by them. I am Yahuwah, your Elohim. So that is what God had to say on that. And that is the end of our Torah portion for this week. So, there's really nothing more for me to add to that. If you follow them, you will suffer consequences. You'll be cut off from the people of God. You'll be vomited out of the Holy Land, of the New Jerusalem. So, making it pretty clear there. Okay. So we go into the Haftorah, and the first reading of the Haftorah is Malachi chapter 3, and then verse 4, 2, and it goes until chapter, if you're reading the Masoretic, in the Christian numbering, chapter 4, verse 6, or else in the Jewish numbering of the Masoretic and in the Septuagint, it's chapter 3, verse 24. And that shall be read by Amber. If she's awake. Amber, are you awake? Amber. Amber, are you awake? I put her to sleep, guys. She's the only one here now, besides me. Amber, did you say that you're gonna be away or something? Okay, well. Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Willow the cat, for riding on the keyboard. I'll take a break then for my own face. Maybe I'll do the same. Maybe I'll take a restroom break. A little break for anyone who's listening and future listening. Although I'll probably say it out. Amber, are you back? Amber, let me know when you're back. Well, Meta, I hope you found the reading thus far interesting. This is one of the most complex and controversial readings we've had in many months. Heard a lot of issues tonight. Uh, Amber, are you gonna come back? Amber, I'm just waiting on you. You sure she didn't fall asleep? Uh, uh, uh. What? What's that? You're back, Amber? All right, well, you're the only one still here. So hence why I decided to, wait for you because I'm not talking, for my own health. If you need to step away, let me know if you're the only one there because that way I can pause because there's no point in me hurting my ear and permanently damaging my ear if no one is listening to me. Okay? I understand that when you left, there were other people here. Yeah. But yeah, if at any point now for the rest of the night, if you need to go and do something, let me know. That way I can give myself a break. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So that being said, although I did just finish reading, I did just now obviously have a little bit of a break, and so I can go ahead and read Malachi, and then you can read, the Ezekiel one at that point. Okay, sound good?
Okay. Okay, yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, because the Malachi one's longer. I'm trying to give you the shorter of them. All right. So,
Yeah, it is shorter. Okay.
yeah, I have your best interest. So yeah, I'm trying to read the longer one. So, you can mute yourself again though, because I'm going to be reading. But please listen, and if you have to step away or do anything, let me know. That way I can, be quiet and give my face a rest for a while. There's no point in me reading if no one's listening. So we continue in the Haftorah, and I will be reading the first Haftorah reading, and that is Malachi chapter 3, verse 4, until, if you're reading the modern day Christian Masoretic numbering, chapter 4, verse 6, or if you're reading the Jewish numbering or the Septuagint, chapter 3, verse 24. Then the offering of Yehuda. So do you want me to stop reading again? Amber, are you wanting me to stop reading and wait? $30. 30 minutes of wasted recording. you've returned, let me know through audio. It's hard for me to read the text through my phone. Amber, are you back? Really, Amber, I wish you would have stayed for about 5 more seconds. So I could have told you if you were going to leave to go and take Dottie out, you could have just ended the recording and started it back up when you came back. These recordings take up space on my computer. It'd be nice if it wasn't needlessly long. We cut out all this extra time. I'm saying this right now because even if you're not in there, I mean, your mother and and she can pass this along. I'll also say it when you return.
I am back.
So Amber, you know, there's been a few times in the past where I'm like, if you just would have stayed for another 5 damn seconds, I could have, you know, given a word that a little instruction would help. Right after you said you were going to go and take Dottie on a walk, I was going to say to you, if you would have just not instantly left, for you to stop the recording because there's no reason to record 30 minutes of silence of you taking out your dog. We can always stop the recording and restart the recording. That way, the file that I download from my computer will be smaller and take up less space on my computer and be easier to edit because I won't have to edit out this big, long space. So, I was going to tell you before you took out Dottie to stop the recording and restart when you got back. But you don't care about me even to continue listening for another second after you say it stuff. That's very upsetting. So, because then you miss good advice like that. But now you're back. We might as well continue with the recording. Yeah, I know. I know, but the thing is that you should have allowed me to say it this time. You know, because it's like 45, that with the bathroom break, it's like 45 minutes of needless recording. That's like 200 megabytes that it's going to take up my hard drive that's totally not needed. And it makes it so much harder to edit the recording afterwards. So it shouldn't have happened this time, is my point. Saying next time, oh great, but you still screwed up this time. Yeah. But yeah, whatever. All right. So as I was about to read Malachi. So by the way, whenever you want to tell me stuff like you're going, please unmute yourself and say it, because I can't read these messages. They don't appear on the computer for me. It's very hard for me to read your typing. So talk to me verbally. So are you ready for me to continue now with the reading?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm not going to give the intro of one reading. I've already given that 3 times. Then the offering of Judah or Yehuda and Yerushalayim will be pleasing to Yahuwah, as in the days of old, and as in former years. Then I will draw near to you for judgment. I will be a swift witness against the sorcerers, against the adulterers, against those who swear falsely, against those who oppress the hired worker in his wages, the widow and the fatherless, against those who thrust aside the sojourner or foreigner and do not fear or honor me, says Yahuwah of hosts. You know, I've brought up this passage before. This is actually a pretty telling passage, in that the Almighty says that he will swiftly judge sorcerers, adulterers, so on and so forth, liars. And, a lot of modern day people who claim to be Christians, they understand that, being a sorcerer is bad, being an adulterer is bad, being a liar is bad. But then look at the next ones that he lists. He will swiftly judge against those who oppress the hired worker in his wages, which means the companies and corporations and managers and bosses who don't pay their workers enough, who don't pay their workers a living wage. So right here, the Bible is telling us that it is a sin not to pay your workers a living wage. Right? That should be pretty mind-blowing for some Americans to hear that. And then, it says, and those who oppress the widow and the fatherless, the orphan. And then it says another thing that's going to blow a lot of people's minds these days. It says that God shall swiftly judge against those who thrust aside the sojourner or the foreigner. That means those who mistreat the foreigner. Now, you notice it doesn't say the foreigner who's legally in your country. No, just if you mistreat a foreigner in general, right? So if they're an illegal immigrant and you are mistreating them, then God's going to swiftly judge against you. See, a lot of modern day Americans who claim to be Christians, that's going to blow their minds, right? But no, God is serious. You got to pay your workers a living wage, and you got to treat the foreigner residing amongst you as you would treat yourself, as you would treat your native born. That's literally what it says multiple times throughout the Old and New Testament. So, and that if you are, not treating those people, the workers and the foreigners, right, then you are not following God. You're not honoring Him. You're not fearing God. So, like, wow, So, if anyone wants to claim that God would be against immigrants or against giving people minimum wage, they're wrong. God is in favor of giving people a living wage, and God is in favor of treating the foreigner as you would your native born. He makes it clear multiple times throughout Scripture. So it's like, okay, So, I've said this before. That tells you that in modern day America, God would not be a Republican, but also from what I already said with the first reading, he'd not be a Democrat either. Very much. Abortion? No. Homosexuality? No. Eating shellfish? No. Right? But at the same time, you got to pay your workers a living wage, and you got to treat the foreigner as your native boy. Right? So God's not a Republican, and God is not a Democrat. God supports the policies of neither of those groups. Clearly, So worth noting there as we continue with our Haftorah reading. For I, Yahuwah, do not change. Therefore you, O children of Jacob, are not consumed. From the days of your fathers, you have turned aside from my statutes, and have not kept them. Return to me. Return to God. That's teshuvah. It's also a word for repent. And I will return to you, says Yahuwah of hosts. That's the Lord God of all creation. But you say, how shall we return? Will man rob Elohim? Yet you are robbing me. But you say, how have we robbed you? In your tithes and contributions. You are cursed with a curse, for you are robbing me, the whole nation of you. Bring the full tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house, and thereby put me to the test. And thereby put me to the test, says Yahuwah of hosts. If I will not open the windows of heaven for you and pour down for you a blessing until there is no more need, I will rebuke the devourer for you. And a devourer, the Hebrew word that's being translated as devourer here, it is like a pest or a famine. It's like locusts. So it's using this symbolism of a famine and a blight, so that it will not destroy the fruits of your soil, and your vine in the field shall not fail to bear. Oh, so yeah, it's some kind of a blight. It's like a fungus, it sounds like, right? Like a bad mold that's that's infecting their soil, and it is killing their fruit and their grapevine and stuff. Says Yahuwah of hosts. Then all nations will call you blessed, for you will be a land of delight, says Yahuwah of hosts. So, if they return to him, then the blight will go away, and they will become a land that is richly blessed. Now, you'll notice here in verse 6, it said, for I, Yahuwah, do not change. So, whenever people like to argue, oh, that was before Christ, God's different now, he's changed. No, God does not change. Or God changed his laws. God doesn't change. If he gave those laws then, he's given them now. It doesn't change. Why would he tell us you have to do this then and not now? All right? So, no, God does not change. Says it multiple times. There's one instance of it. Your words have been hard against me, says Yahuwah. But you say, how have we spoken against you? You have said, it is vain to serve Elohim. What is the profit of our keeping his charge, or of walking as in mourning before Yahuwah of hosts? And now we call the arrogant blessed. Evildoers not only prosper, but they put Elohim to the test, and they escape. Then those who feared or honored Yahuwah spoke with one another. Yahuwah paid attention and heard them. And a book of remembrance was written before him of those who feared or honored Yahuwah and esteemed his name. They shall be mine, says Yahuwah of hosts, in the day when I make up my treasured possession. I will spare them as a man spares his son who serves him. Then once more you shall see the distinction. Then once more you shall see the distinction between the righteous and the wicked, between one who serves Elohim and one who does not serve him. For behold, the day is coming, burning like an oven, and all the arrogant and all the evildoers will be stubble or chaff. The day that is coming shall set them ablaze, says Yahuwah of hosts, so that it will leave them neither root nor branch. But for you who fear or honor my name, the Son of Righteousness shall rise with healing in its wings. You shall go out leaping like calves from the stall, and you shall tread down the wicked, for they will be ashes under the soles of your feet. On the day when I act, says Yahuwah of hosts. Remember the law, or the Torah, the commandment, the wisdoms, the teaching, the instruction of my servant Moshe, the statutes and rules, or righteous decrees, or just decrees, that I commanded him at Horeb for all Israel. Behold, I will send you Elijah, or Eliyahu, the prophet, before the great and awesome day of Yahuwah comes. The end times, before the end of the world. And he will turn the hearts of fathers to their children, and the hearts of children to their fathers, lest I come and strike the land with a decree of utter destruction. The Hebrew term rendered decree of utter destruction refers to things devoted or set apart by the Almighty to be destroyed. And that verse right there, verse 5, is the verse that is quoted in the New Testament whenever it says that Elijah shall come before the Messiah. That Elijah shall come before, if you believe that Yeshua, Jesus, is the Messiah, before Jesus. Hence where the New Testament talks about John the Baptist being a version of Elijah. And then also where during the Transfiguration, where Moshe and Elijah appear with Yeshua on the mountain, with Peter wanting to make a tent, right? So that verse is what's being referenced in the New Testament. But you'll notice that, God is saying that, we need to follow what he says. We need to follow his commandments. Otherwise, we shall be the chaff. Do you want to be the chaff or do you want to be the wheat? Right? So that's the end of the first half Torah reading. We now go into the second half Torah reading, which will be read by Amber. And it is Ezekiel chapter 22, verse 1 through 19.
And the word of the Lord came to me, saying, You, son of man, will you judge the bloody city? Then declare to her all her abominations. You shall say thus, the Lord Elohim, a city that sheds blood in her midst, so that her time may come, and that makes idols to defile herself. You have become guilty by the blood that you have shed, and defiled by the idols that you have made. And you have brought your days near to the appointed time of your years has come. Therefore I have made you a reproach to the nations, and a mockery to all the countries. Those who are near and those who are far from you will mock you. Your name is defiled. You are full of
tumult. It means you're full of fighting and hardship and ruin.
Behold, the princes of Israel in you, every one according to his power, have been bent on shedding blood. Father and mother are treated with contempt in you. The sojourner suffers extortion in your midst. The fatherless and the widow are wronged in you. You have despised my holy things and profaned my Sabbath. There are men in you who slander and to shed blood, and people in you who eat on the mountains. They commit lewdness in your midst, and you men uncover their father's nakedness. In you they violate women who are unclean in their menstrual impurity. One commits abomination with his neighbor's wife. Another lewdly defiles his daughter-in-law. Another in you violates his sister, his father's daughter. In you they take bribes to shed blood. You take interest and profit, and make gain of your neighbors by extortion. But me you have forgotten, declares the Lord Elohim. Behold, I strike my hand at the dishonest gain that you have made, and at the blood that has been in your midst. Can your courage endure, and can your hands be strong in the days that I shall deal with you? I, the Lord, have spoken, and I will do it. I will scatter you among the nations and disperse you through the countries, and I will consume your uncleanness out of you. And you shall be profaned by your own doing in the sight of the nations, and you shall know that I am the Lord. And the word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, the house of Israel has become dross to me. All of them are bronze and tin and iron and lead in the furnace. They are dross of silver. Therefore thus says the Lord Elohim, because you have all become dross, therefore behold, I will gather you into the midst of Jerusalem.
Thank you. So, what's talking about here is it's talking about whenever the kingdom of Judah was exiled, under the Babylonians, and they were exiled because of their idolatry and because of their sin, and it says here, that they were, uncovering their father's nakedness, which I guess means having sex with their mother, or well, either their actual mother or else their father's later wives. And they were, violating women in their menstrual impurity. So they were having sex with menstruating women. They were having sex with their neighbors' wives, and so committing adultery, and with their daughter-in-laws, their sons' wives, and with their sisters. They were taking bribes. They were charging people interest, which is a sin. We've covered that previously. And they were making profit that was unreasonable gains by, like, for instance, not paying their workers enough, as we just covered in the previous Haftorah reading, and by extorting their neighbors, and taking advantage of people, just in general. And so this taking advantage of people and having incest and doing all those kind of things and worshiping idols, and in doing this, they caused all kinds of drama and fighting, and they caused themselves to be the mockery of other nations. And they were doing, all these abominations. They weren't following them. They were doing everything that he told them not to do, they were doing, and everything that he told them to do, they weren't doing, basically. And they became a mockery, and they caused all that trauma. So, think about our own lives in modern day, right? How much drama do we see in the people around us? And how much of that drama is caused by them not following what God tells them to do, right? And and then these people who make up whatever land you live in, they're doing this stuff. It's making you and your fellow countrymen a mockery to others, right? So that tells us if you don't want the drama in your life, if you want to cut out that drama, follow God. Actually follow Him. Don't say, "Oh no, I believe Him, I follow Him." No, actually follow Him. That's going to reduce that drama a lot. And don't underpay your workers. Don't get false gains and false profits, and not profits as in like as in someone prophesying the future, but profits as in by unrighteously taking money that you should be giving to others, and honor His Sabbaths, and don't commit adultery, don't do bestiality, and don't do needless bloodshed. And then it says, and then we will be refined like silver in a furnace. And any impurities, any corruptions will be burned out of us. And that's something that is referred to in Proverbs and throughout the Old and New Testament, of us being refined like silver. So that is the Haftorah readings. So now we go into the Berit Hadashah. Berit Hadashah being the renewed covenant, or else the new witness. It can be translated both ways. And we, as always, start with the Besorah reading. This week it's John chapter 7, verse 1 through 52. And I'll be doing that reading. After this, Yeshua went about in Galilee. He would not go about in Judea, because the Jews, or the Judeans, in Greek, this word is yodioi, which probably referred to the religious leaders, maybe the Pharisees. So because the Judeans were seeking to kill him, by that they mean like Pharisees and Sadducees. Now the Judean feast of booths, that'd be Sukkot, was at hand. So that would be the week-long fall feast that ends the fall feast. So his brothers said to him, "Leave here and go to Judea, that your disciples also may see the works you are doing. For no one works in secret if he seeks to be known openly. If you do these things, show yourself to the world." For not even his brothers believed in him. Yeshua said, and again, brothers can mean his kinsmen or his friends. Yeshua said to them, "My time has not yet come, but your time is always here. The world cannot hate you, but it hates me, because I testify about it that its works are evil. You go up to the feast. I'm not going up to this feast, for my time has not yet fully come." After saying this, he remained in Galilee. Now, they're talking about him going up for the feast because, if you remember from our previous speaking on the holy days, the Feast of Booths, Sukkot, or Sukkot, is one of the pilgrimage feasts, where all people of the earth, that's made clear in the Old Testament, it's not just Israelites, it's all the people of the earth, even the enemies of the Israelites, even the Pharaoh of Egypt, even all the countries that and tribes that attack the Israelites are to go up to Jerusalem for the Feast of Booths, The Bible makes that really clear, directly saying those words. So it's a pilgrimage feast. Everyone's supposed to go up to Jerusalem. So that's why they're talking about traveling for the feast. Everyone who is physically able to is supposed to, unless something prevents them, be it financially or physically. So if they're sick and can't travel, for instance, So that's what's talking about. But after his brothers had gone up to the feast, then he also went up, not publicly, but in private. He went up for it. The Judeans were looking for him at the feast and saying, "Where is he?" And there was much muttering about him among the people. While some said, "He is a good man," others said, "No, he is leading the people astray." Yet for fear of the Judeans, no one spoke openly of him. About the middle of the feast, remember it's an 8-day feast. About the middle of the feast, Yeshua went up into the temple and began teaching. The Judeans therefore marveled, saying, "How is it that this man has learning," or has letters in the literal words there, "when he has never studied?" So he's not been to an official yeshiva, to an official, um, you know, school of learning, Bible school. So Yeshua answered them, "My teaching is not mine, but but his who sent him, but his who sent me. If anyone's will is to do Elohim's will, he will know whether the teaching is from Elohim, or whether I am speaking on my own authority. The one who speaks on his own authority seeks his own glory, but the one who seeks the glory of him who sent him is true, and in him there is no falsehood. Has not Moshe given you the law? Yet none of you keeps the law," which again could be the law is the Torah, or the teachings, or the wisdom, or the instruction. Has not Moses given you the teachings of God? Yet none of you keeps his teachings. Why do you seek to kill me?" The crowd answered, "You have a demon who is seeking to kill you." Yeshua answered them, "I did one work, and you all marveled at it. Moshe gave you circumcision, not that is from Moshe, but from the Father. And you circumcise a man on the Sabbath. If on the Sabbath a man receives circumcision, so that the law of Moshe, or the Torah, the teachings as given from the Almighty through Moshe, may not be broken. Are you angry with me because on the Sabbath I made a man's whole body well? Do not judge by appearances, but judge with right or righteous judgment. So, what's happening there is, you remember a few weeks ago, we read that the Pharisees were angry with Yeshua because he had healed a man on the Sabbath. And he right now is pointing out, because they're saying, "Oh, that's work. You worked on the Sabbath. You can't do that." And he's pointing out, "Hey, you're supposed to circumcise a child on the 8th day after it's born. Even if that day is a Sabbath, you guys still have your moil, your man who does the circumcision, circumcised. Isn't that work on the Sabbath? So if I healed someone on the Sabbath, clearly that is acceptable work." And by the way, modern day Judaism actually agrees with Jesus there. Modern day Judaism says that medical workers, doctors, surgeons, nurses, paramedics, and police officers and firefighters are allowed to work on the Sabbath. So Yeshua was right in that. The modern day rabbinic Judaism is descended from the Pharisees. So the Pharisees now no longer disagree with that. They're in full agreement. Yeshua was right in that it's okay to heal a man on the Sabbath. Some of the people of Jerusalem therefore said, "Is not this the man whom they seek to kill? And here he is, speaking openly, and they say nothing to him? Can it be that the authorities really know that this is Hamashiach, that this is Christ, that this is the Messiah? But we know where this man comes from. And when Hamashiach, when Christ, the Messiah, appears, no one will know where he comes from." So Yeshua proclaimed, as he taught in the temple, "You know me, and you know where I come from. I have not come of my own accord. He who sent me is true, and him you do not know. I know him, for I come from him, and he sent me." So they were seeking to arrest him, but no one laid a hand on him, because his hour had not yet come. Yet many of the people believed in him. They said, "When Hamashiach appears, will he do more signs than this man has done?" The Pharisees heard the crowd muttering these things about him, and the chief priests and Pharisees sent officers to arrest him. Yeshua then said, "I will be with you a little longer. Then I am going to him who sent me. You will seek me, and you will not find me. Where I am, you cannot come." The Judeans said to one another, "Where does this man intend to go that we will not find him? Does he intend to go to the dispersion among the Greeks and teach the Greeks? What does he mean by saying, 'You will seek me, and you will not find me'? And where am I? Where I am, you cannot come." On the last day of the feast, that'd be Shemini Azaret, and that'd be the eighth day, the great day, as it then says, Yeshua stood up and cried out, "If anyone thirsts, let him come to me and drink. Whoever believes in me, as the scriptures have said," which that can also be translated as, "Or let him come to me and let him who believes in me drink," as the scriptures have said. "Out of his heart will flow rivers of living water." Mim chamim in Hebrew. Now this he said about the Spirit, whom those who believe in him were to receive. For as yet the Spirit had not been given, because Yeshua was not yet glorified. When they heard these words, some of the people said, "This really is the prophet." Others said, "This is Hamashiach. This is the anointed one. This is Christ." But some said, "Is Hamashiach to come from Galilee? Is the Christ to come from Galilee? Has not the scripture said that Hamashiach comes from the offspring of David and comes from Bethlehem, the village where David was?" So there was a division among the people over him. Some of them wanted to arrest him, but no one laid hands on him. The officers then came to the chief priests and Pharisees, who said to them, "Why did you not bring him?" The officers answered, "No one ever spoke like this man." The Pharisees answered them, "Have you also been deceived? Have any of the authorities or the Pharisees believed in him? But this crowd that does not know the law is accursed." Nicodemus, who had gone to him before, and who was one of them, said to them, "Does our law judge a man without first giving him a hearing and learning what he does?" They replied, "Are you from Galilee too? Search and see that no prophet arises from Galilee." So, we've mentioned previously about how the Pharisees, they were upset at him because, he was preaching the Torah. He was speaking the instruction and the truth. He was calling them out. They weren't following it, and he was calling out their extortion, their, taking heavy tithes from widows and orphans beyond what they were supposed to, and that they weren't paying people properly, and they were just absolutely violating the the law. And so they were like, we gotta kill him. And I mentioned before about how he goes into what is their equivalent of a church and throws the table on the ground and takes and throws the money, the collection money that is gathered, and he calls them a den of thieves and robbers, and then they wanted to kill him because of that. You'll also notice that they they're saying that he is a false prophet. They're saying that he's possessed by demons. They're saying that he teaches heresy, the opposite of truth. And Yeshua, Jesus says in Scripture that because they persecuted him, and the servant is not greater than the master, that they shall persecute us likewise. And that there'll come a day whenever people will want to kill his followers and think that in killing them, they're doing God a favor. So that really tells you that if you are following the Almighty, and if you are calling out people who are not following the Almighty, and if they are calling you a heretic, if they're saying that you're preaching a false gospel, and if they are saying that you should die, that's just proof that you're following Christ. It's just proof that you're following, Yeshua, that you're following Jesus, because that's what they did to him, and he said that's what they're going to do to us. So, so don't be afraid, as Scripture also says, don't be afraid, because that's known. That's how people are going to treat us. My co-shepherd in this group, Joshua, he calls that Pharisee type nature. He calls it the religious spirit. I use the same word that the Apostle John in his letters calls it. I call it Antichrist. That's being Antichrist, being the opposite of Christ, while claiming to follow him, doing the opposite, which is exactly what the Pharisees did. They claimed to follow God, but they were not in this instance. And some of my other friends call it churchianity. It's doing like the Pharisees. It's saying, "Oh, we follow God," but if you look at it, they're not, and they're persecuting those who actually do. So, that's what's happening here, and they want to kill him. And he's saying, "Yeah, I'm going to die," and the people are like, where's he saying that he's going? Is he saying he's going to go out to the diaspora, to the followers of the Almighty who are living amongst the Greeks, like in Alexandria? Where's he saying he's going to go? So, but he's talking about they're going to kill him, and he's just telling them that you need to stop mistreating people, stop robbing people, and storing people. So that is our Vasor reading. That's our Gospel reading. We now go into our first epistle, our first letter, and it is Romans. So Paul's letter to the Romans, chapter 3, verse 19 through 28, and that shall be read by Amber. Amber.
Now we know that whatever the law says, it speaks to those who are under the law, so that every mouth may be stopped, and the whole world may be held accountable to Elohim. For by works of the law, no human being will be justified in his sight, since through the law comes knowledge of sin. But now the righteousness of Elohim has been manifested apart from the law, although the law and the prophets bear witness to it. The righteousness of Elohim through faith in Yeshua HaMashiach for all who believe, for there is no distinction. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of Elohim, and are justified by His grace as a gift through the redemption that is in Yeshua HaMashiach, whom Elohim put forward as prophet.
Yes, continue.
By His blood to be received by faith. This was to show Elohim's righteousness, because in His divine forbearance He has passed over former sins. It was to show His righteousness at the present time, so that He might be just and the justifier of one who has faith in Yeshua. Then what becomes of our boasting? It is excluded. By what kind of law? By the law of works? No, but by the law of faith. For we hold that one is justified by faith apart from works of the law.
Thank you. So, as I've mentioned before, Paul was originally a Pharisee. So he wrote like a Pharisee. And if you've ever read the writings of the Pharisees, that'd be the Talmud, you see it, they're very confusing. So I understand that people have a hard time understanding Paul. That's why we oftentimes have to go through the writings of Paul with a fine-tooth comb, because it's not easy to understand Paul. So we're going to go through it. So now we know that whatever the law says, it speaks to those who are under the law, so that every mouth may be stopped, and that the whole world may be held accountable to Elohim. So, this passage that we just read in Romans, the whole thing that Amber just read, a lot of people like to take this whole passage and say, see, the law has been done away with. Well, wait a minute here. Does that conclusion make sense based on even this first verse, right? It says, now we know that whatever the law says, it speaks to those who are under the law. The law bill says, see, we're no longer under law. It says, so every mouth may be stopped, and the whole world may be held accountable to Elohim, to God. Are you accountable to God? Because if so, it's saying you're under the law. Right? That's exactly what it's saying. So we're all accountable to God, which means we're all under the law. All right? And it says, for by works of the law, no human flesh or human being, depending on your translation, will be justified in his sight, since through the law comes knowledge of sin. So that second part there, what a lot of people are ignoring. Through the law comes knowledge of sin. That means, how do you know what is and is not sin? By knowing the law, by knowing the Torah. That is how you know what is and is not sin. Now, as I've covered before, if you are just doing the works of the law, but you don't believe in God, and you're not doing them for Him out of love for Him, where's your benefit? How's it benefiting you at that point? It's not, right? So, that's what Paul is saying here. Or, Paul was very much interested in, you can't just externally follow the law for the glory and praise from others. Oh, look how righteous he is. Because if you're doing it like that, well, then your reason for following the law is absolutely backwards and horrible, And then instead of getting the blessing, you'll get the curse. But instead, you have to follow the law inside of your heart, inside of your, with your faith and your trust and your honoring of God. And when you followed it both inside and outside, you had to do both, according to Paul. You read his works, you mean if you read his writings, then you got the blessings of it. So, that's a big concern of Paul's throughout really all of his writings, but Romans in particular. So, he is saying that, just externally doing some of the works in order that others will praise you, that through that, you're not going to be justified. That's, it's not the point. That's like the opposite of the point. The point is to exalt God and to honor God. Yeah. So, and God makes that clear. And if you're not doing it to honor him, then you are in fact breaking it. You are sinning. And if you know enough to be doing them, you should know enough to know that, you're then sinning at that point and not fulfilling all of them, and breaking one of them is, as bad as breaking any other. So he then continues, but now the righteousness of Elohim has been manifested apart from the law. Then people say, see, we don't have to follow. No, that's not what he's saying. He's saying that we've now seen in Yeshua the law made manifest, which is his exact word. Um, separate from reading it, we've seen it. Although the law and the prophets bear witness to it, bear witness to Yeshua. The righteousness of Elohim through faith in Yeshua HaMashiach for all who believe, for there is no distinction, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of Elohim, and are justified by his grace or his favor as a gift through the redemption that is in Yeshua HaMashiach. And that is to say, God freely gave us his instruction, his teaching, his word. And he freely gave us Yeshua, right? But that Yeshua, who showed us how to follow God, and the Torah, which showed us how to follow God, those will, justify us or make us righteous if we follow them, if we have faith in them and trust in them and are faithful to them. Then those will just, that will justify us. That will make us righteous. And those are free gifts. Whom Elohim put forward as a propitiation by his blood. That means that he is being given basically as a sin offering for us, that Yeshua has been given in exchange for our sins to be received by faith. This was to show Elohim's righteousness, because in his divine forbearance, so his divine knowledge and regalness and rights and loving fatherly love, he had passed over former sins. It was to show his righteousness at the present time, so that he might be just or righteous, and the justifier, or the person who makes righteous, of the one who has faith in Yeshua. Then what becomes of our boasting? It is excluded. By what kind of law? By a law of works? No, but by the law of faith. For we hold that one is justified by faith apart from works of the law. So I say that if you do the works of the law, but you don't have any faith, where's your boasting? Because the bill, that's what they did. They would do the works, but not actually have the faith, and they would boast. See how righteous I am. See how good I am. You should treat me well, treat me right, because I'm so righteous. That's boasting. No, no, you don't get a right to boast. Sorry. No, because you're not really following the law at that point. No, because it's not by just doing them, but you actually have to do them for the right reasons. You have to have the right kavana, the right intentions for why you do it. If you do the right thing but with the wrong intentions, are you really doing the right thing? That's kind of like a modern day example. It's a great example here. And that is you get men who say, well, I was nice to her, and so she should sleep with me because I was nice to her. No, you asshole. You were not, if you were nice to her just in order to get her to sleep with you, you're an asshole and you don't deserve that reward. And that's what Paul is saying. You know, oh no, I should go to heaven because I was nice to people. Wait, but why were you nice to them? So that other people could exalt me. No, then you weren't being nice. You're being a prick. You don't get any reward. you know, ouch. So that's what Paul's saying. You have to have the right reason behind your actions. If you claim to have the right reasons, but you have no actions, do you really have the reasons? But also, if you